My name is Sarah. I lived in a very quiet rural area in the United States, where houses were far apart and surrounded by open farmland. Dirt roads connected everything, and right behind our house, there was an old cemetery. I had been listening to horror stories for a long time, but I never thought I would ever have one of my own to tell. What happened to me is something I still don't fully understand, even today. Many times I tried to convince myself it was just in my head, but after everything that followed, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I was married, and at that time I had a small child, about 2.5 years old. My husband worked a government job, and sometimes he had to travel for a few days at a time. Our house was located at the very edge of the area. In front, there was an open yard. On one side, a small space for animals. And behind the house, a dirt wall. Just beyond that wall, the cemetery began. It wasn't directly attached to our home, but it was close, enough that if I went up to the roof or opened the back window, I could clearly see the graves. At first, after moving in, the place felt strange, but not scary. Rural areas get quiet very early. Unlike cities, there aren't many lights. After sunset, everything slowly falls into silence. You might hear distant sounds, someone closing a door, faint clinking of dishes, dogs barking far away, and then, eventually, nothing but wind. After a while, I got used to it. But there was one thing I never got used to. There was a specific grave. Even now, I struggle to explain it properly. There was nothing visually special about it. It wasn't the newest, not the oldest, no unique markings, no tree next to it, nothing. And yet, every time I stepped outside or went to hang clothes, my eyes would go straight to that grave. At first, I ignored it. I told myself maybe it was just positioned directly in my line of sight. But over time, I realized something disturbing. I wasn't looking for it. My eyes were going to it on their own. There was a small headstone, white but worn down like typical rural ones. The writing was done with cheap paint, already fading. One thing stood out clearly, though, the date of birth at the top. For some reason, I could always see that part clearly. But the bottom part, the date of death, was faded, covered with dirt and moss. I couldn't read it from a distance. It sounds like a small detail, but for me, it slowly became something much bigger. When I was younger, my grandmother used to say something strange. Don't stare too long at graves. Especially don't focus on their dates. Back then, I laughed it off. I once asked her why, and she didn't give a clear answer. She just said, "Not everything is meant to be understood. Some things you should just see and walk past." At the time, it sounded like one of those old sayings people just repeat. But there's something about human nature. The more you're told not to do something, the more curious you become. And that's exactly what happened to me. Every time I saw that grave, that incomplete date, I felt this quiet urge to go closer and read it fully. It wasn't obsession, just a small, constant thought sitting in the back of my mind. Time passed. Life continued normally. I took care of the house, my child, the animals. My husband came and went because of work. When he was home, everything felt normal. But when he left, the house felt too big, too quiet. One evening, I was looking out the back window, and for a moment, that grave looked clearer than the others, almost like it stood out. I blinked, looked again, and everything was normal. I told myself it was just lighting. I even mentioned it to my husband once. He laughed and said, "That happens. Your brain focuses on one thing, and then you keep noticing it." So I dropped it. But that night, I couldn't sleep. My child was next to me asleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, then the door, then thinking about that grave again. The strange part was I knew I had read the name on the grave before, but I couldn't remember it. No matter how hard I tried, the name would slip from my mind. I could remember the birth date clearly, but not the name. That was the first thing that truly unsettled me. But what happened next? That's when everything changed. The first time things became truly unsettling was when my husband left for 3 days. It was the rainy season. The sky had been heavy since the afternoon, and by evening the air felt damp and thick. Then lightning flashed in the distance, and the rain started. Rain in rural areas is very different from the city. Every surface makes its own sound: the roof, the soil, the trees, even the animals. Water began to collect in our yard, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. The ground near the cemetery turned dark and heavy. That night, I finished dinner early. I fed my child and put him to sleep. The electricity flickered a few times, then went out completely. We had a flashlight and a small emergency light. That was it. The rain kept getting stronger. Sometimes, with the wind, it sounded like something was brushing against the walls. That wasn't unusual. Storms always make ordinary sounds feel bigger than they are. I was sitting quietly in the room when suddenly I felt like something passed very close to me. There was no sound, just a feeling. Like someone walked right behind you in a closed room and stopped for a second. I turned around immediately. Nothing. I told myself it was just the wind. Maybe I was already feeling uneasy. But then, right next to my ear, I felt a cold breath. Very light, but clear enough that I instantly stood up. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it around the room, checking every corner. Nothing was there. That was the first moment I felt real fear. I sat next to my child and stayed there, trying to calm myself down. The rain kept hitting the roof harder and harder. After a while, I heard something else. It sounded like a woman, crying. At first, I ignored it. In storms, animals or wind can sometimes sound like human voices. But then I heard it again, this time clearer. A low, broken crying sound. Not loud, not screaming, just steady, quiet sobbing. I slowly stood up and walked toward the window. When I opened it, cold rain air rushed inside. Outside, it was completely dark. The cemetery ground was soaked, and the graves were barely visible shapes in the darkness. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. Only the rain, and that same crying. Part of me said, close the window and go back. But another thought came right after. What if someone actually needs help? In rural areas, roads are empty. Maybe someone slipped, fell, or got lost in the rain. I stood there for a long moment, unsure what to do. Then I made a decision. I grabbed the flashlight, wrapped a shawl around myself, and opened the yard door. The rain had slowed a little, but the ground was muddy. I carefully walked along the wall, toward the cemetery. There was a small open space between our house and the graves. People could pass through easily. I called out again, "Who's there?" The crying was clearer now, and it was coming from one specific spot. My heart was beating so fast, I couldn't even hear my own footsteps anymore. The flashlight shook slightly in my hand. Raindrops flashed in the light and disappeared. As I got closer, I saw something. Behind one of the graves, something dark. At first, it looked like a shape. Then it looked like hair, long wet hair, hanging down. And beneath it, a figure. It looked like a woman, sitting with her head down on her knees, gently moving as if she was crying. The sound was coming from her. I froze. Without thinking, I said, "Who are you?" No answer. The figure kept moving slightly, like someone quietly sobbing. My hand trembled as I lifted the flashlight a bit higher, and in that exact moment, I felt it again. That same feeling from inside the room. like someone was standing right behind me, very close. I turned around instantly and pointed the light behind me. Nothing. But that was enough. All my courage was gone. I didn't even look back at the grave. I stepped backward, then turned and ran. My feet slipped in the mud. The rain soaked my clothes, but I didn't stop. I ran straight into the house, slammed the yard door shut, locked it, then locked the room door and window too. My hands were shaking so much I could barely latch them properly. My child was still asleep, but I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept telling myself maybe I saw something wrong. Maybe it was just bushes, cloth, shadows in the rain. Maybe the crying was just the wind. But then, that breath near my ear, that feeling behind me, that figure, everything mixed together in my mind. Somewhere near dawn, I finally fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the rain had stopped. The sky was still cloudy, but everything felt normal again. That's the trick with daylight. Things that feel terrifying at night start to seem foolish in the morning. I even told myself I had probably overreacted, but something still didn't sit right. If there really was something there, I needed to know. I left my child inside, locked the door, and stepped out. The ground was still soft from the rain. My feet sank slightly into the mud as I walked toward the cemetery. I went straight to that grave. The first thing I noticed was the ground. The soil looked disturbed. I won't say they were clear footprints, because that would sound too precise. But the dirt was pressed down in places, like someone had been standing there, or sitting, or moving around during the night. Behind the grave, the soil looked more uneven than anywhere else. I stared at it for a few seconds, then crouched down. Near the edge of the grave, something was half buried in the mud. At first, I thought it was just a piece of cloth. I found a thin stick nearby and carefully pulled it out. What came out made my whole body go cold. It was a small doll. A simple handmade doll, made from cloth and thread. But it didn't look like a normal toy. There were pins stuck into it, several of them, and tied around it were small threads, and something that looked like a soaked, muddy charm. For a moment, I just stared at it. The first thought that came to my mind was simple. Someone did something here, some kind of ritual, or something similar. I didn't hold it long. I panicked and dropped it right there. Then, my eyes moved to the headstone. For the first time, I was close enough to read it clearly. It was a woman's name. Nothing unusual about it, a common name. But the moment I read it, something felt wrong, like I had seen it before, like I had already read it, but forgotten. The birth date at the top was exactly the same one I had been seeing from afar. Then I leaned closer and wiped away some dirt from the bottom. I finally read the date of death. At that moment, I didn't react much. My attention was still more focused on the doll and those pins. But something heavy settled inside my chest, a strange weight. Still, I turned around and went back home. Sometimes you don't understand the importance of something right away. It hits you later. And for me, that realization didn't take long. As soon as I stepped back into the house, I felt it. I wasn't alone. I turned around and looked outside again. The cemetery looked completely normal. Wet ground, quiet air, nothing unusual. But inside me, something had changed. After that day, things started happening. At first, small things, so small that I ignored them. During the day, while standing in the kitchen, I would suddenly feel like someone was right behind me. I would turn around, nothing. While washing dishes, it sometimes felt like someone was standing close, watching me from over my shoulder. When folding clothes, I would suddenly feel a heavy drop in my chest, like if I turned around, something would be standing right there. But every time, there was nothing. I kept telling myself I was just affected by what happened that night. I had seen something strange. I had found that doll. Of course, my mind was reacting. That's what I believed. Until the next night, it rained again. That was when something real happened. It was late. My child was asleep next to me. Rain was falling heavily on the roof again, loud enough to cover most outside sounds. But within that noise, I heard something different. Footsteps on the roof. Measured steps, not like an animal running, not random. It sounded like someone walking calmly from one side to the other, then stopping, then walking again. I sat up straight. At first, I thought it might be a cat or some animal. That happens in rural areas. But this was different. These were not quick, light movements. They were steady, controlled, like someone pacing. I held my breath and listened. 4 steps, pause, then again. My throat went dry. I pulled my child closer and sat there in silence. Then I felt something else. From the direction of the window, it felt like someone was standing outside. Not a visible shadow, just a presence, like someone was right there. On the other side, looking in, I didn't dare open it. Then suddenly, a loud knock came from the main yard door. Once, then again, then louder. I almost jumped. Right after that, dogs started barking. Not just one, many. All at once, like they were reacting to something unfamiliar. From the animal area, I could hear restless movement, bells clanking rapidly. The kind of sound animals make when they're nervous. The knocking continued. Again and again. I didn't even have the courage to ask, "Who is it?" After a long time, it stopped. The dogs slowly quieted down. But that night, I understood something clearly. This was not just my imagination anymore. After that night, I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was normal. I tried to stay busy. I cleaned, cooked, and took care of my child. But the feeling inside the house had changed. It was like the walls were the same. The rooms were the same. But something invisible had moved out of its place. When something shifts like that, everything starts to feel wrong. My husband was still away. I didn't tell him everything. I only said I wasn't feeling well and that I felt uneasy. I knew if I told him the full story about the crying woman, the grave, the doll, the footsteps, he would either rush back or think I was overthinking. Neither option would help, so I decided to wait. But things didn't stop. That evening, I locked all the doors carefully, like always. But this time I checked them more than once, not just the locks. I even placed my hand on the door, as if I was checking if something was pressing from the other side. It sounds strange, but fear changes how you think. My child fell asleep early that night. I lay down too, hoping I could finally rest. But as soon as I closed my eyes, that feeling came back, the same one. Like someone else was in the room. I sat up slowly and listened. The room was silent. Then, from far away, I heard something. A laugh, soft, like a child trying not to laugh too loudly. I quickly looked at my son. He was asleep, completely still. The sound came again. This time, I was sure. It wasn't inside the room. It was outside. My whole body went cold. It was already late. In a village like ours, no child would be outside at that time, especially not laughing. I slowly got up and moved closer to the door. I pressed my ear against it. Silence. Nothing. I didn't open it. I went back and sat on the bed, holding my child close. I wanted to stay awake, but fear is exhausting. At some point, I fell asleep. The next morning, I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, but something stayed in my mind, that grave. The death date. I remembered it again, clearly this time. So I did something I hadn't done before. I thought about it carefully. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop. That date matched an old story my mother-in-law once told. She had mentioned that long ago, before I came into the family, one of my husband's relatives, a young woman, had died suddenly. Her body had been brought to that same area for a short time. At the time, I didn't think it was important. But now, it didn't feel like a coincidence. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was connecting things that had nothing to do with each other. But once your mind starts connecting pieces, it doesn't stop. That afternoon, I stayed in the kitchen, trying to focus on cooking. My child was sitting near the door, playing with a spoon and a small bowl. And suddenly, he laughed. Not a normal laugh. It was like he was reacting to someone. I turned around quickly. He was reaching out into empty air. First, he stretched his hand forward. Then he moved it like he was taking something from someone. Then he brought his hand toward his mouth, like someone had given him food. And then he laughed again, rushed to him. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed somewhere behind me. That was the moment something inside me changed. Fear for yourself is one thing. Fear for your child is something else. I picked him up immediately. He got upset, like I had interrupted his game. Then he held my face and slowly looked past me again. He wasn't scared. That was the worst part. If he was crying, I could say he saw something frightening. But he was happy. Like he was, playing with someone he knew. That evening, I finally admitted something to myself. This wasn't just in my head. Something was with us. That same evening, I finally called my mother. At first, I talked normally. Small things, nothing serious. But slowly, I told her everything. The grave, the crying woman, the doll with needles, the footsteps on the roof, the knocking on the door, and my child playing with someone I couldn't see. At first, she thought I was just scared because I was alone. But as I kept talking, she went quiet. Then she said, "I'm sending your brother." For the first time in days, I felt a little relief. But before night even came, something else happened. After sunset, I went outside to leave water for the animals. As I turned back toward the house, I suddenly felt it, like someone was watching me from the cemetery. I couldn't see clearly. It was already getting dark. But when you keep looking at the same place every day, you start to recognize its shape, even in darkness. And I knew something was there. I wanted to go closer, just one look, but I stopped myself. I went inside, locked the door, and left the lights on longer than usual. That night, I didn't let my child sleep alone. I kept him right next to me. The first part of the night passed quietly. Then I heard something from the kitchen, a light sound. At first, I ignored it. Sometimes animals or rats can move things. But then, a bowl slid across the floor, slowly, clearly, like someone pushed. My heart dropped. I called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Then I heard a metallic sound, like a spoon falling. I didn't want to go, but I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't sleep at all. So I picked up my child, grabbed the flashlight, and walked slowly toward the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Utensils were in place, but one bowl was upside down on the floor. I picked it up. There was a thin line of wet mud on its edge. That's when fear really settled in. Mud inside the house at that hour. Didn't make sense. I washed it and put it back, but I couldn't leave the kitchen door open anymore. I closed it. Then I went back and locked the room as well. That night, I didn't sleep. After some time, the knocking started again. But this time, it was different. Not loud banging like before. This time it sounded like something metallic hitting the wooden door. Slow, controlled, like someone was tapping with a metal bowl. I stayed completely still. Then it came again, 3 times. Then silence. Then a voice, a woman's voice. Open the door. Not loud. Not desperate. Not begging. Just certain. Like she knew I was inside. My entire body froze. There was no weakness in her voice. No fear. Just calm insistence. I said nothing. Then the metal sound came again. 3 taps. Then silence. Then again, softer this time. Open the door. Outside, dogs started barking again. 1. Then many. Even the animals nearby became restless. Their bells started ringing in uneven, panicked movements. I held my child tightly and stayed silent. I felt like if I said even one word, whatever was outside would know exactly where I was. This went on for a long time. Then slowly, it all stopped. No knocking, no voice, just silence. That night, I stayed awake until morning. At sunrise, my mother and brother arrived. The moment I saw them, I broke down. I told them everything again. Every detail. My brother asked me directly, "Did you open the door at any point?" I said no. My mother picked up my child. After a few minutes, he started smiling again, looking toward an empty corner. My mother saw it with her own eyes, and her expression changed immediately. My brother checked the entire house, the yard, the kitchen, the back wall, even the animal area. Then he went toward the cemetery. I didn't go with him. I stayed at the door and watched from far. He stood near that same grave for a long time. When he came back, I asked, "Did you find anything?" He didn't answer clearly. He just said, "That place doesn't feel right." My mother looked at me and said, almost angrily, "Why did you even go there?" I had no answer, because the truth was, I didn't go there for a reason. Something pulled me there. That day, the house felt a little safer, only because I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in many days, I ate properly. My mother recited prayers inside the house. She closed the back window completely. My brother even placed thorny branches near the path between the house and the cemetery, so no one or nothing could easily come through. For a moment, I thought maybe things would finally get better. But that night proved us wrong. We all stayed in the same room. My mother said, "Let's see what happens tonight." My brother stayed outside in the yard, awake, watching. A small oil lamp was lit. The doors were locked tightly. The first part of the night passed quietly. Then suddenly, from the direction of the cemetery, we heard it again, crying, that same woman. I froze, instantly. But this time, I wasn't alone. My mother heard it too. She looked at me, and I saw fear in her eyes. That was the moment my last bit of doubt disappeared. If I had heard it alone, I could still say it was my imagination. But now it was real. The crying wasn't loud. It sounded distant, weak, like someone who had been crying for a very long time. It would stop, then start again, like heavy, tired breaths between sobs. My mother quietly placed her hand on mine. Neither of us spoke. Then, my brother called from outside, "Are you okay in there?" My mother answered, "Yes," but her voice was shaking. And something else happened. Something that made even my brother stop talking. From the back wall of the room, we heard a sound, soft, slow, like fingers, dragging across the wall, not scratching hard, just sliding, from top to bottom, then silence, then again. My mother immediately started reciting prayers louder. I couldn't move. My brother rushed inside. He pressed his ear to the wall, but by the time he came in, the sound had stopped. He stood there for a few seconds silent, then said, "I'll go check outside." My mother stopped him instantly. "No, not now." For the first time, He listened. He didn't go. The next morning, we all went to the back wall together. There were marks. Very faint, not deep scratches. But the surface of the mud wall looked disturbed, like someone had run their fingers across it. Again and again, my brother stared at it for a long time. Then he looked away. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just my fear anymore. It had become everyone's problem. That same day, my mother said, "You're coming with us. You're not staying here until your husband returns." She was ready to leave immediately, but something strange still stayed in my mind. That grave, I didn't want to go there again, not at all. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. It felt like everything, the crying, the doll, the footsteps, the knocking, the woman at the door. Everything was connected to that one grave, like it was the center of it all. Before we left, my brother went there one last time. When he came back, he pulled me aside and said quietly, "Don't be scared, but I need to tell you something." I asked, "What is it?" He paused for a moment, then said, "Near that grave, where you found the doll, there are marks in the soil, like someone has been sitting there." Again and again, I didn't say anything, because I had already seen it. That night, in the rain, even after I went back to my parents' house, I was not at peace. Usually, when someone leaves a place like that, they feel relief, especially when they return to a familiar home, a safe place. But for me, my body left that house. My mind didn't. The first night, I thought I would finally sleep well. My mother was with me. My brother was in the house. My child was right next to me. I closed the window myself, locked it, fixed the curtain, then lay down. But that night, I had a dream, was standing on the roof of that house again, looking down at the cemetery. All the graves looked the same except one. That same grave, it looked clearer than all the others. The top part of the writing was visible, and now the bottom part was clear too. Then I heard a voice, right next to my ear, soft, slow. "You read it now, didn't you? Now read it completely." I woke up suddenly. My heart was racing. The room was dark. I told myself it was just a dream. Just a dream. But then, tap, soft knock, on the closed window. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly. And then, silence. I didn't tell anyone that night. But the next day, something became clear. This wasn't just in my mind anymore. My child started doing it again, looking into empty corners, smiling, reaching out, as if calling someone. My mother saw it too. She later told me quietly, "When he does that, don't respond. Some things, if you respond to them, they become familiar." That made everything worse. On the third day, my husband came. He only knew that I was scared and had left the house. But that day, we told him everything, every single detail. He stayed quiet for a long time, then said, "We're going there today." My mother immediately said, "No one goes alone." So we all went together. When we reached the house, everything looked normal. The yard, the door, the animals area, even the cemetery. In daylight, for a moment I felt foolish, like maybe I had imagined everything. But then my eyes fell on that grave, and that same pull came back, strong, uncomfortable. My husband and brother went closer. They checked the grave. The ground, the spot where I found the doll, was empty now, but the soil looked disturbed, like it had been touched again. That night, back at my parents' house, something happened to my husband for the first time. He said that while walking inside from the yard, he heard something, very faint, like a woman crying, right next to his ear. He turned. Immediately, there was nothing. The next day, He told me this privately, and that was it. That was the moment my last bit of denial disappeared. The following days passed quickly. My husband and brother went back to the house during the day. They collected our belongings, took care of the animals. I didn't go back, not even once. On the third day, they returned with strange expressions. Something had happened. My husband said, while we were outside, we heard a child laughing. I immediately sighed, "Our child is here." He nodded. "I know, but it sounded like a child." Then he told me something else. Near the back window, in the wet soil, there were small footprints, like a child's, but they didn't come from anywhere. They didn't go anywhere, just a few steps, and then nothing. After that, my husband made the decision. We would never go back to that house. Later, my mother-in-law told us something she had never mentioned before. People used to talk about that grave. They said the woman buried there did not die a normal death. Older women in the village would warn others, don't stay near that grave for too long. Within a few days, we moved everything out, left the animals with relatives, and we left that place behind. Things did get better, a little, but two things never left me: the dream and the sound. In my dreams, I still see that grave, but now it doesn't feel like it's looking at me. It feels like it's looking at my child. And sometimes, on rainy nights, I still hear it, very faint, very far. A woman crying, weeks after we moved. One day, I was unpacking my clothes, and I found something, a folded piece of paper. I didn't remember putting it there. When I opened it, there was nothing written inside, just a small dried patch of mud. Someone might say it came from somewhere else, but I knew that mud came with me from that place. After that, I never tried to learn more about that grave, who she was, how she died, what was buried there, or what someone may have done, because some questions, even their answers, don't bring peace.